Hello! Today we're going to learn how to multiply decimals. But first we're going to work through an example in which we will convert a decimal fraction into an ordinary fraction to show that the answer is the same. So we need to multiply 12.2 decimals by 4. So far I'm multiplying by a whole number. So how do you multiply 12.2 by 4? To multiply, you and I will convert 12.2 decimals to an ordinary fraction. So that's 12.2 tenths. I have to multiply by the first 4. By the rule of multiplying a fractional number by a fractional number, I must be sure to convert the mixed number into an improper fraction. This is a mandatory rule. So, 12.2 tenths I convert to an improper fraction. 12 I multiply by 10. That will be 120, and plus 2. That will be 122 tenths. And the given fraction I will multiply by the first 4 fractions. Of course, by rule, I have to reduce the numbers 10 and 4 or 10 and 122. But I won't do that, because I need to get a decimal fraction in my answer. So I will multiply 122 by 4. As a result, I get 488. And 10 I multiply by 1, I get 10. And then I need to write that number as a decimal. What do? First I have to isolate the whole part, because it's an improper fraction, because the numerator is greater than the denominators. So I divide 488 by 10. That comes out to 48 whole and 8 tenths. And then I can write it down as 48 whole 8 tenths. As you can see, if I apply the ordinary fractions multiplication algorithm, I'm going to have a long record, and I need to shorten it somehow. So, I'm going to teach you how to multiply without turning it into an ordinary fraction. What do you need to do that? Let's remember how to multiply ordinary natural numbers. These numbers are multiplied column-wise. What happens in this case? Let's remember how to multiply natural numbers. Because in order to multiply a decimal fraction by a decimal fraction, or in our case, a number, we're going to ignore our dot. So how do we write this down? Of course, I'm going to write down 12.2 tenths times 4. I wrote down, and pay attention again, I wrote it down ignoring the whole part and the fractional part. That is, I equalize my notation on the right side. Notice the numbers 2 and 4. That's the line. And now I'm multiplying without paying attention to the dot. So 4 times 2, that would be 8. 4 times 2, that's 8. And 4 times 1, that would be 4. And the last step I have to do, I count the number of decimal places after the period. Let's go to our example. What's the number of decimal places after the period? Just 1 decimal place. That's it, 1 decimal place. So, yeah, I'm counting just 1 decimal place from the end. 1. And here I'll put my dot. So the result is 12.2 tenths times 4. I get 48.8. 8 tenths. That's how easy it is to multiply decimal fractional numbers. And one more example. That was the first example, and now the second example. 45 whole. 8 tenths I'm going to multiply by 5.1 tenths. In this case, I need to multiply 2 decimal fractions. You and I remember that we don't pay attention to the comma, so I'm writing it down. 45.8 tenths times 5.1 tenths. The most important thing is that we have a column on the right-hand side, on the right side, so they're equal, 8 and 1. Now I'm multiplying. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 4 is 4. Next, I multiply by 5. 5 times 8 is 40. Zero is written, 4 is memorized. 5 times 5 is 25. And the 4 we memorized is 29. Now I need to memorize 2. 5 times 4 is 20. And 2 I've memorized. And the result is 22. And now by rule I have to add. So I multiply like ordinary natural numbers. And now I add 8. 5 plus 0 is 5. 4 plus 9 is 13. 3 I write, 1 I memorize. 0 plus 2 is 2. Yes, 1 is 3. And again, 2. And now for the most important part. I go back to my example and count how many digits I have after the dot. I count the total number of digits. There's one sign in this number and there's one sign in that number. It turns out to be 2 signs together. And now in my number I go from the end necessarily. So I go 1, 2, and after the 3 I put a dot. The result is 233, 58 hundredths. Let's check the number of digits after the dot again. Let's count. 1 is the sign after the dot, and 2. In this case, there should be 2 signs after the dot. 1, a sign, and 2. So we have done everything correctly. In the next lesson, we'll look at some examples. And that's all for today. Goodbye. See you again.